Welcome everyone. My name is Amin Dillon. I'll be one of your hosts for the webinar today. I am an SAP security architect at Layer 7 Security and a subject matter expert in the use of Solution Manager for SAP cybersecurity monitoring. I'll be joined today by Georg Becker. Georg works at SAP and is a specialist in code vulnerability management using SAP CVA. Georg and I will be discussing and outlining how you can secure your systems against cyber threats, both at the code level and at the system perspective, using CVA and Solution Manager. We'll also be discussing how you can integrate the two platforms for an integrated, holistic approach for SAP cybersecurity. Finally, we'll be discussing how you can use these platforms and Solution Manager specifically to address the recent 10K Blaze exploits, the vulnerabilities that are targeted by those exploits. But our intention really is to go much broader than that and take a broader perspective that looks not specifically at just 10K Blaze, but how you can manage and respond to and secure your systems against all known vulnerabilities against SAP systems using tools like CVA and Solution Manager. Note that you should be able to note your questions in the webinar. My colleague Zara will be tracking those, and if we have some time at the end, we'll be able to address them. In fact, even if we don't get time to address those questions, we can follow up with you with those questions. So even if you have a question which you don't necessarily want to be addressed right now, but you want it to be have it be addressed privately, we can send you a private follow-up for any questions that you may have. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Georg, and Georg is going to walk through the first part of our presentation, or our webinar, which is essentially covering the CVA, and then Georg will switch it back to me, and we'll cover Solution Manager after that. So, with that, Georg, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Aman. My name is Georg Becker. I'm a developer at SAP in Waldorf, Germany. I'm working on SAP Code Vulnerability Analyzer. I'm part of a team of about 6 colleagues who create the CVA. Here comes our more or less famous disclaimer slide. I'm obliged to say a few words about it. I might make forward-looking statements or any kinds of statements, especially for the forward-looking statements. Please don't take me seriously. I'm just a developer. I'm not in the position to promise anything. This is a legal note which I'm forced to tell you. Okay, what is the situation at many of our customers and also of many companies who have an IT? They have software which has grown over years, which has become complex. In many cases, somebody created a first version, somebody else added on to it. They were optimized for performance and obviously for functionality. But in many cases, since in former times the software was not available in the internet, security was not so important. So in many cases, there are security problems in people's software. And also in many cases, an old-fashioned approach is used. Somebody builds software in the first step, then their IT department deploys the software, and obviously at some point in time, a penetration tester, or even worse, a hacker gets access to the software and finds a security vulnerability and breaks into the system. The fourth step, the most important, the most expensive step is you have to pay for fixing this software. And obviously, this is not a very good approach. And this is similar to what 10K Blaze results in. 10K Blaze teaches us it's very important to configure a system correctly right away in the first place. It's not a good idea to wait until somebody breaks into the system and then configure it. Okay. Now, let me give you a rough overview of the positioning of our products, SAP Code's Vulnerability Analyzer. On the left-hand side, you see dynamic application security testing. This is what CVA is not for. On the right-hand side, you see that's part static application security testing. This is where CVA comes into play. And in the first line, you see manual source code review. On the left side, also manual application penetration testing. We are not doing manual steps in CVA. We do automated source codes analysis. And now SAP Code Vulnerability Analyzer can only scan ABAP code. But of course, we are aware of the fact that at most of our customers, not only ABAP is used, but also other programming languages, especially JavaScript, but also Python and you name it, C, C++. And for such source codes, we recommend to use SAP Fortify by Micro Focus. It's a product that's owned by Micro Focus, but you can also buy it from SAP, just as CVA, of course. And especially, please note that there is a nice integration of CVA into Fortify. You can export your findings to Fortify and analyze all your security findings, ABAP and non-ABAP, in one system, in one Fortify system. Also, Fortify offers functionality for dynamic application security testing. Okay, a rough overview of the building blocks which we are talking about. On the right-hand side, in that large yellowish rectangle, you see ABAP Test Cockpit. ABAP Test Cockpit is a tool which helps you in all kinds of quality assurance tasks for developers, also for quality experts. And on the right-hand side, on these horizontal bars, in the first place, you see security, CVA. This is one of the features of ABAP Test Cockpit, which you can use to do security analysis on your source code. But you can also do checks on things like code robustness, performance, usability. You can do also unit tests, which is again dynamic application security testing. And on the top, you see these two blue rectangles, SAP GUI and Eclipse, ADT, ABAP development tools, which shall symbolize that you can use ABAP Test Cockpit and CVA, as well as in the SAP GUI-based development tools like SE80, SE38, SE11. But you can also use it with ABAP development tools, the Eclipse-based, more modern development environments. Now, please have a look at the lower right part. You see that you can hook up other systems to the ABAP Test Cockpit and do analysis of your code of these blue checked systems. So what we recommend, you don't have to do it that way, but what we recommend to do is you have a central system with our test cockpit in which you can update your checks without having to wait for upgrades of other parts of the system, because we recommend to have only ATC and CVA in this central system. So you don't have to take care of any HR or CRM software to get updated. You only have one system with one ATC and CVA, which can be updated to get the latest and greatest checks. Now you can extract results of our test cockpit and CVA and send them to the Solution Manager, green part on the left-hand side, in order to use it for custom code landscape management, CCLM. You can connect it to the charm tool to release your transports, to have checks run when transports are released. And also you can extract your findings to Fortify, which I mentioned earlier, the red part on the left-hand side. Within the central check system or any development system, the architecture is as follows. You usually have ABAP developers who work with the ABAP workbench, who work with ABAP editors, SE38, SE37, SE80. And obviously they work on their ABAP source code. And now the ABAP test cockpit is integrated into all these editors, by the way, including ADT, of course, ABAP development tools. And ABAP test cockpit calls the well-known code inspector, which has been around for several years in the meantime. And code inspector itself calls CVA and other SLIN checks. SLIN is the extended program check. And ABAP Test Cockpit is not just a UI for these tools. It has quite a lot of own functionality, additional functionality, like the storage of check results and the handling of exemptions. I'll tell you what an exemption is right away. An exemption is the handling of results which you don't want to see anymore. You can suppress them by defining an exemption. This can be a finding which you just don't want to deal with right now, or it can be a false positive finding. Sometimes such tools do produce false positives. There are not too many of them, but there are some. And you can suppress these exemptions by defining an exemption. You always need 2 people to define an exemption. The typical workflow is that a developer finds a false positive or a finding which he doesn't want to deal with and initiates the exemption workflow, which then must be approved by somebody else, usually a quality expert. And on the right-hand side, you see the connection to the transport management. This means that you can instruct ATC to grab into the transport workflow, which means that when you release a transport, ATC is called to check the objects in the transport and possibly, if you configure it that way, inhibit the export of the transport request. You don't have to force the blocking, but you can do this if you want to. Okay, we have a short product roadmap overview. I'm not going into all the details. We do have quite a lot of features which have been released already, like you can visualize CVA checks in Fortify. You can do that central scanning with a central system. You can check the other parts of Adobe Forms and also of Smart Forms, all kinds of features like that. What we are planning in the future is a connection to AMDPs, ABAP managed database procedures. So we will be able to scan SQL scripts codes, which is defined by AMDPs, but executed in a HANA database. In the long run, we will release a very improved data flow analysis. We do have a data flow analysis in the tool already, of course, but there will be a very nicely improved version in the future. We are also working on releasing a version of CVA which can be used in the cloud. Okay. Let me give you a demonstration, a short demonstration of the product to show you what it's all about. We have a nice little program here, very short. We are not focusing on the UI. We are just focusing on the functionality here. It's a very short program, which is supposed to be an employee self-service for changing your own address. We are working on this database table right here. The user ID is the key, together with the client, of course. There's a last name, there's a first name, a street, a zip code, and a city. Also a country code, a phone extension, and a salary in there. Now, note that this is my record right here, and my address is currently 134 Maple Street, right here. Now let's see what the little program does. It gives me a selection screen, and right here I can change my address. Let's say I just moved to 73 Main Street. I type this in, press F8. The system tells me your address was changed. Okay, fine. Let's see whether this is true. In the database table, refresh. Yes, right here, 73 Main Street. So seems like the program works. Fine. Let's see what happens now. Oh, well, I forgot to show you. Look at my salary. It's 1,200 bucks. Not too much. I have 3 children, 2 of them at the university. 1,200 bucks per month. Well, not too much. Let me type in a weird string now. XYZ quote blank salary equals quote 1,500. No quote in the beginning, no quote at the end. Press F8. Your address was changed, is what the system tells me. Let's see what happened. First refresh. And now my street is XYZ, and look at my salary. My salary is now 1,500, not 1,200 anymore. What happened here? Note that there's no input field for my salary on the selection screen. Well, let me explain you how this works. I typed, you see the program again. It's basically the same program as you saw in the SAP GUI a second ago. I typed in XYZ quote, salary equals quote 1,500, the red stuff on the right side. Now this flows into the set expression, which is assembled in this line 11. In the set expression, we have street equals quote. That's the green stuff, which comes from that literal on the left side. Street equals quote. Then comes the input, which I typed in, the red string, XYZ quote, salary equals quote 1500, plus that green quote at the end, which comes from the literal in the end of the line right here. Okay. And now down here, this set expression is used in a dynamic update statement. And since this set expression is syntactically correct, the database interface and the database itself execute it. It sets street to XYZ and sets the salary to 1500. This is what happens. But it was not intended by the developer. The developer only intended to let the user change the street, the zip code, the city, and the phone number. But I could change the salary. This is obviously a security problem because I shouldn't be able to change my own salary. Well, CVA will report possible SQL injection in the set clause. Let me show you in the system. Here's the program again. Right click, check, ABAP Test Cockpit. Remember I said ABAP Test Cockpit calls Code Inspector and Code Inspector calls the CVA checks. Let's execute it. Okay, here we go. There you see security analysis in extended program check, potential SQL injection in the set clause. I can double click on this and I get this more detailed description. It tells me where the finding was found. There are a couple of links to more documentation. First link gives me a list of all the checks which we have in CVA, quite a lot of them, about 80, I guess. Second link is a detailed description of the check itself. And almost all of the checks are documented in a certain structure. First part, what is checked, is a description of what this check is all about. Second part is a procedure, which, no, didn't intend that, which gives the developer a hint or description of how he can get rid of the finding. And getting rid of the finding doesn't mean that the finding is hidden somehow or anything. It just means that it is an instruction to make the program secure. And now down here is a technical description of how the check works. It's very short in this case. You don't need this very often, but there are cases where you need this, where it's interesting to read it. Now, here you can navigate back to the program. It's a description of the data flow. First part of the data flow is the parameter statement. This is where the input comes from. Second part, where the set expression is assembled. And now you get to the dangerous statement by clicking here on display objects. You also see a priority here. In this case, we figured out this is priority 1. If you want to, you can change the priority to your needs. Okay, back to the slides. This is almost the same slide as before, but in more general terms. The system sees that there is an input field. This can be an input from the UI. It can also be a parameter of an RFC function call, function module, or anything like that. The system sees, the CVA sees that there is a potentially dangerous statement. And finally, it sees that there is a data flow between the input, between the input field and the dangerous statement. And this is the combination in which the CVA issues a finding. This is a kind of a structure which is applied to quite a lot of checks in CVA. I guess about 75% of the checks work this way with this data flow analysis. Okay, I already told you about this remote code analysis. We suggest to have a central check system. You don't have to do this, but we suggest to do it. And you can connect checked systems, A, B, C, to this central check system. And now the check logic runs in the central system, which can be upgraded at any time at your discretion. We have remote stubs in the checked systems. This is essentially one RFC function module, which can be applied to a system via an SAP node. And this is all you have to do in the checked system itself, plus a little bit of configuration like setting up RFC connections and stuff like that. And this gives you the advantage that new checks can be installed at any time into the central check system. You always have your checks up to date. What does it mean for your developers? Your developers don't have to log on to the central check system. They can work in their checked system as before. They can start as a CVA run or an RTC run. They can view the findings in their development system. They can apply for their exemptions in the development system. But the exemptions are stored in the central systems. Also, of course, they do their development and their corrections in the checked system. Okay, how is CVA is a licensable product. It's sold in blocks of 5 users, so it's a user-based pricing. Fortify, which can be bought from us, is licensed in terms of number of installations. Overview of available checks. Of course, I can't go through all the checks in these short sessions. I can only give you an overview. We have SQL injection checks for OpenSQL and ADBC. We have code injection checks for ABAP code, like for the insert report statement or general subroutine. Call injections, like calling function modules in a dynamic way and stuff like that. We can check that. We have checks for OS command injection, operating system command injection. We have checks for directory traversal, also for backdoors and authorizations, and a couple of checks on web exploitability problems. For OpenSQL, for example, we have about 10 checks, which you can see here, but I'm running out of time, so I'll skip over this slide. A couple of features and benefits we have. We have a baseline functionality, which means when you introduce CVA, you can configure the system such that old findings which are in the system right away when you install or use CVA, start using CVA, can be hidden, because you would probably find thousands of findings, and your developers are usually don't have the time to fix all of them in 1 week, so you can hide them and concentrate on new findings. But you can also, of course, remove that baseline and make the findings visible again. I talked about remote scans already. Integration into the development infrastructure. I told you that you can use CVA from SAP GUI-based tools, and you saw that also from the, and you can also use it from the Eclipse-based tools. We have extensive documentation. You saw that. It's innate for the developers to fix their findings. We have a nice data flow analysis, which means that there is a nice reduction of false positives. You can adjust the priority of your checks, which is a nice feature to configure the CVA to your needs, to your standards, which you find important. And you can define exemptions, which means you can handle false positives or findings which you just don't want to see anymore, for whatever reason. Okay, CVA can export the findings to the Solution Manager, which means you can use the results for giving the findings to layer 7 security, but you can also use them for central monitoring in connection with decommissioning of software, CCLM or UPLL. Okay, now this is an overview of a couple of more information which you can get on the web. I'd like to direct you mainly on the blogs in the lower part of the screen. The first one is a blog of my colleague Peter Barker, who should have been here today but is sick. He's the product manager. In this blog, all the checks which CVA offers are listed, quite a large thing. And the second blog is a description of the central check system structure which we recommend to use. Having said that, I thank you for your attention, and I'm handing over to Aman.
Thank you, Georg.
Second. Here we go.
Thank you. Now, Solution Manager is a very complementary to what Georg has been speaking about in terms of managing custom code vulnerabilities with CVA. The focus point for Solution Manager is mostly at the system level, but also at the user level, focusing on administrative user privileges. So the idea here is that you can address your cybersecurity needs holistically by using both platforms, but they are independent platforms, so you don't necessarily have to use them together. You can use one and not the other. And also they don't necessarily are licensed together either. In terms of Solution Manager and licensing, well, as you may be aware, Solution Manager, in fact, is not licensed separately. It's built into the support agreements for with SAP, and that's actually one of the reasons why it's one of the most widely deployed SAP platforms in the world. In fact, there's over 100,000 installations of Solution Manager worldwide, and which makes it the second most widely deployed SAP platform. It's also certified for information security management. In terms of the tools and the applications that you would use in Solution Manager to address vulnerability management, again at the system level, system patching, also threat detection and incident response. All of these applications are available and built into the Fury Launchpad. Some of the applications that you're seeing here are custom applications, Fury applications or UI5 applications from Layer 7. Others are standard applications, but are using content that is provided by Layer 7. So examples would be, for example, metrics and alerts built into templates that are used for threat detection. But each one of these areas within Solution Manager are tightly integrated, and data is shared across all these applications because obviously they're sharing the same platform. For vulnerability management, there are automated scans that are performed by Solution Manager using security rule sets that you can develop on your own, or you can work with a partner like Layer 7 to implement in your Solution Manager. Once these rule sets are imported, they're automatically applied against all of your systems on a daily basis, but you can have more frequent scans if desired. The scans will essentially review the security configuration of all of the connected systems, compare them against benchmarks, and identify risks and vulnerabilities. And those risks and vulnerabilities you're then able to view and manage using the custom Fury reports and dashboards within Solution Manager. The custom vulnerability report, for example, the Fury vulnerability report, is modeled very closely on system recommendations with the same type of user experience. You're able to go to a dashboard and see a summary of all of your systems and the number of issues that have been identified based on the most recent scans of those systems. You're able to filter the results by different system types or priorities. For example, you can filter by production on high priority systems. And then once you get into viewing the findings for those systems, you can drill down into the details of each finding, view the correction instructions, click on links to relevant SAP notes and recommendations, perform a compliance gap assessment against major compliance frameworks, and also you can comment and you can track your progress in terms of your remediation, and you can export individual findings or the entire dashboard in terms of a summary to external files where you can manage them in Excel if you like. But essentially, these reports allow you to visualize and manage all of the system level and user level issues that are detected by Solution Manager for your landscape. And essentially understand and remediate any risks that could expose, or cyber risks that could expose your systems to any type of threat. In terms of the coverage of the vulnerability checks, well, it's too broad to cover here, but essentially you're looking at the system settings, administrative privileges that are assigned to users, active services. We have literally thousands of checks that are performed across the board for all system types that are for known and vulnerabilities in SAP systems that, if they're not managed, could make your systems vulnerable. There are also checks that are applied at the database level, not necessarily just SAP databases, but also third-party databases. So if you're using Oracle or IBM or Microsoft platforms, database platforms, you'll also be able to monitor the security configuration of those platforms through Solution Manager. There's also built-in dashboards that you can use, which will give you a summary of the risk profile of your systems based on your open vulnerabilities, unapplied security notes, and also open security alerts that haven't been addressed and need to be addressed in terms of event monitoring that's performed by Solution Manager. Again, these are at the Fury level, so you'll access these directly from your Launchpad. You can filter by specific systems in each one of the dashboard cards, and then you can also then drill down into the detail values and export from there as well. In terms of patching, well, there's a tool, an application, again, a Fury application called System Recommendations. And this is an application that uses the connection to SAP support that's built into Solution Manager to pull notes information directly from SAP support. And then essentially provides all the information in terms of what notes, not necessarily just security notes, but other types of notes that need to be applied for your systems. And again, you can drill down into the values of those to understand them. You can manage them and track them comment on them. You can also download the corrections directly through system recommendations and apply them in your system. So when you're downloading, you'll download the correction directly from SAP support. And then when you are downloading, it will ask you which system you would like to apply that patch in. In most cases, you're going to select the development environment, and then it will download that patch and make it available in the development system. Now, the other really nice feature about system recommendations is its integration with other parts of Solution Manager, most notably areas like SCMON and UPL. Also solution documentation. And if you perform this integration, essentially what it means is that you're able to perform change impact analysis on patches before they're applied in your systems. And this can be very useful for identifying areas that are impacted, so that you can focus your test plans and your test strategies on areas which you know are going to be impacted, and also to gauge the level of testing that you need to do. Like, for example, if you run an analysis and you figure out actually there aren't many components that are being impacted, or the usage level of those components is quite low, in some cases you may be able to get away with a quick smoke test versus doing full regression testing. Whereas on the other hand, where if you come back with results for a large number of components with a high number of usage in terms of a count of a number of times that these areas were executed, whether they be transactions or programs or functional modules, that would tell you that actually there's quite a lot of extensive testing that needs to be done before you apply those notes. With the integration in solution documentation, you can take that a step further, and you can actually start doing some business impact analysis and understanding which business process steps and business areas are going to be impacted by the notes that you apply. And this is quite a powerful functionality and a feature which addresses a very important problem when it comes to patch management for SAP environments, and that's often customers may get behind that patch cycle because they're a little hesitant to apply note, not knowing what the impact is going to be on their systems. Well, if you're properly using, or first of all, if you properly configure Solution Manager and you're using all these applications and the insights that they provide, you can really address that problem and go a long way to understanding the impact, so that you're more likely to apply your notes in a more timely way and apply them, full stop, and not necessarily just ignore them. Interface monitoring is really kind of now getting into more of the event monitoring and the threat detection capabilities of Solution Manager. Interface monitoring essentially allows you to create what are called scenarios, and these scenarios are essentially a definition of the systems, the types of services or protocols or channels that you would like to monitor, and based on those scenarios, Solution Manager automatically maps those the topologies for those connections for the systems that you want to monitor. By the way, you can have multiple scenarios configured at the same time. It doesn't just merely create a static topology so that you can visualize how these systems are connected together, which is important because often we don't always know what type of protocols are used to communicate between across system, within a landscape, and across landscape. So that in itself is important. But Solution Manager goes further than that, and it actually collects usage data on these channels. So it essentially allows you to monitor the communication that is being performed through these channels, and it also allows you to set up metrics and alerts for specific types of events, and that's important from a security perspective, because we use that is in layer 7, use ICMON to monitor cross-system communications, focusing on specific URLs, if it's HTTP calls, and then also specific function modules. And what we're really looking for is for the execution of blacklisted or dangerous function modules, and we have a certain list of what we target. You can tune the blacklist to add or remove other function modules, and you can also get very granular in terms of your metric settings and your alerting. So you, for example, you can have whitelisted destinations if it's an RFC channel. You can focus on specific types of RFC connections, not necessarily all RFC connections. You can well, essentially you can have that type of exclusion built on a system by system basis. The monitoring can be performed for internal communications, so this cross-system communications within your landscape, but also external connections as well. So if you have, for example, cloud connections that you want to monitor, or connections with partner systems, maybe your customers or partners and their environments, and you can also monitor what's going on between those connections using ICMon as well. This actually just gives you some more information in terms of what type of dangerous functional module RFMs are monitored. Some of these function modules allow you to perform administrative functions like user maintenance or the installation and running of programs from one system to another, so essentially remotely. And then once you do configure ICMon, essentially what you will be getting are alerts at any time an execution is made, and you'll also get notifications by email, also by text message or SMS alerts, essentially, if you want them, which will notify you immediately when those events happen and give you instructions and guidance on terms of investigating and remediating, as well as providing you all the information in terms of which systems are impacted, the date, the time of the event, and what specifically was called through which channel. Now, system monitoring is another capability of Solution Manager that we leverage, and we leverage system monitoring essentially to monitor security relevant events that are recorded to SAP logs. Our templates have literally hundreds of metrics and alerts that are pre-configured to monitor for or detect indicators of a compromise in all of the most common and most widely used SAP logs, like the security audit log, gateway server log. We also monitor HANA logs as well and Java logs, and as well as standalone logs for the SAProuter as well. So essentially, once you import and you apply our templates for the systems that you like to monitor for, these metrics and alerts will get automatically activated, and then they'll start to monitor these log sources periodically. And you can set the frequency, how often you want these metrics to be checked. You can go as quickly as every minute, and you may want to do that for some very critical areas, and others you can go on an hourly basis or a daily basis if they're not that critical. So you can actually adjust the frequency based on the priority and based on your own needs, and also based on the resourcing of your solution manager and kind of what underlying resources are available. But it's not just purely about detection. When we're thinking about threat detection, I mean, we focus mostly on the ability to detect an event very quickly. So it's kind of mean time to detection. It's a common metric that's used. But another metric that's quite important is the mean time to response, and that's often gets neglected when we're thinking about about threat detection. And what Solution Manager does is essentially enable you to respond quickly to events and not necessarily just be notified of what's going on. And it does that by we do that by providing custom guided procedures, and these guided procedures are essentially incident response procedures that provide best practices for investigating any type of security alert that is generated by Solution Manager. So the idea here is that anytime you get an alert from Solution Manager, you would click on the investigation option, and then you will start a guided procedure which will guide you through step by step all of the steps that you need to take to properly investigate and respond to that incident. And you'll log your findings and your comments as you go along, and you'll then run an HTML report right at the end, which will summarize all the steps and all the conclusions that were made for the investigation, which you can then archive as your audit evidence. So this essentially enables you to respond more effectively with the best practice, and also to respond more quickly with often automated steps. So many of the steps that are in the guided procedure are in fact automated, where you have to, for example, jump to a back-end system to review an event and log, rather than you kind of manually navigating through that system. You can just click on an automated jump, which would jump you straight to that underlying log source and the event, so you can view it and then jump right back, so that you can investigate and respond a lot quicker than you normally would do, as well as track all of your investigation and within these guided procedures. You can integrate the alerts that are coming from Solution Manager with SIM platforms. Now, we integrate with a variety of different SIM platforms, but it's really the same approach. Essentially, what we do is we configure Solution Manager to write the alerts to an external file. We tell Solution Manager what type of fields that we want for the alert details, in what order, how we want them to be separated, and then essentially based on that, Solution Manager will automatically start to write those events as they're being generated. So as an alert is triggered, it will automatically write that alert to an external file, and then at the OS level, an OS command will periodically push the contents of that file to your external SIM platform, so that you can start to actually monitor SAP level events within your SIM. This is a much better approach than directly trying to integrate individual logs from each system within your landscape into a SIM platform. That is extremely time consuming. It's also difficult because these logs have very different formats and structures. And so what Solution Manager does is to make it easier, it essentially acts like your middleware. It structures the data and it normalizes the data, so it's essentially in a common format, so that integration is much easier, and it's a single point of integration rather than multiple points. Now, Georg had mentioned CVA integration. There's actually a couple of ways that you can integrate CVA with Solution Manager. One is the standard way, and that's where you activate an area called CCLM or CCM, which is Custom Code Management. And once you go through those activation procedures, essentially that in itself will start to pull data or CVA data ATC data, including CVA results, into Solution Manager, where you can then monitor those findings. And the issue with CCM is that CCM can be quite complex to configure, and then also CCM is only available to customers that are on the enhanced support, the enterprise support from SAP. So it's not available to customers that are on standard support. So that's why at Layer 7, what we've done is we've developed a custom connector which doesn't rely upon CCM, so you don't need to be on enterprise support and you don't need to activate CCM. You just need the connector, and then once you activate the connector, it would automatically pull the data into Solution Manager and make it available to the reports and the dashboards within SOLMAN. So essentially, when you're monitoring security findings and risks that have been identified by SOLMAN, you're doing it at an integrated level. So it's it's including issues that have been discovered from CVA, whether that be from each individual system where the CVA results are or CVA is being used, or from a central system. That is also an option. And you can also vary the level of detail that you want to have in these reports. Now, we typically don't provide as much information as you have in CVA. When Georg was going through those screens, you had a lot of information in terms of background and guidance in terms of how you should be addressing those. We don't necessarily have that same level, but we do certainly tell you which objects, what type of issue was found in which system, and the specific lines within the program which have that vulnerability. But you can add further information if you like. For example, the contact person, the name of the developer, if you need to follow up with those developers to get those issues remediated. So just kind of really quickly summarizing, Solution Manager provides a variety of different applications which, when utilized, can enable you to address your system level vulnerabilities and user level vulnerabilities. It provides reporting capabilities, patching tools, security dashboards, ability to monitor SAP traffic, and also the ability to perform event monitoring and detecting indicators of a compromise and platforms and capabilities for responding to those as well. Now, why should you use Solution Manager versus some of the others? Now, we have actually a comparison chart which goes into a lot more detail about this, and I'd encourage you to go online and download that. But at a very high level, Solution Manager is recommended by SAP for this type of monitoring. The platform itself is supported and maintained by SAP. There are no hardware requirements or any new agents or users that are required when you're using Solution Manager for your security needs. Essentially, you're leveraging the existing platform with all the agents and users that are already configured. You're benefiting from a direct connection from SAP when it comes to patch updates. And for a variety of different reasons, it's a much easier approach to implement. You also benefit from regular updates from ourselves as well as from SAP for the platform itself. And also there's a lower total cost of ownership. One of the main reasons for that is you're not licensing Solution Manager separately as you would if you were using another tool. Now, there is some further information over here. Now, I did want to actually cover the 10K Blaze exploits. Unfortunately, the version of the deck that I'm using here doesn't include that particular slide that I wanted to discuss. But when we talk about 10K Blaze, I'm sure as you're all aware, we're not talking about really new vulnerabilities that suddenly come to light in SAP systems. What we're talking about are new exploits or new ways of exploiting those known vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities are spread across a few components that you find in most SAP systems, specifically the gateway server and the message server. The Solution Manager will enable you to detect issues to do with the configuration of gateway server ACLs, so your secinfo and reginfo files, as well as also ACLs for the message server. Now, the second part of that, which is managing or maintaining the ACLs for the message server, has become much more important as a result of these new exploits, so-called 10K Blaze, because essentially it means that you should now, the importance of maintaining the ACL is much greater now, essentially to prevent attackers from registering themselves as internal servers and then being recognized as internal servers, and therefore being able to run commands or to register themselves or perform program starts through the gateway server, since they are recognized then as internal rather than as being external. And that would be and they will be able to do that if you're using the default entries in the higher versions of SAP ABAP systems. So if you're using Solution Manager, you'll be able to detect insecure entries in the message server in all of your systems, as well as the gateway server. You'll also be able to monitor all of the gateway server and other message server parameters to ensure that they're securely configured. And then finally, you'll be able to monitor the gateway server log and events that are unfolding being logged in the gateway server log, as well as a message server log, looking, for example, for monitor commands, any server registrations, or any successful or unsuccessful program starts. All of that you'll be able to do using Solution Manager. So so the bottom line is that if you were using Solution Manager to its capabilities, you would probably have not lost any sleep over the recent announcements or the release of these new exploits, because the existing monitoring capabilities of Solution Manager across those areas that are targeted by the exploits are very extensive, both on a preventative level in terms of actually securing your systems to decrease the likelihood of those attacks being successful or being performed, but also on the detective capabilities of you being able to detect a possible execution of that exploit against your systems. You also would have been aware of the relevant SAP notes and the status of those notes through system recommendations, because there are a bunch of actually quite old notes that have been around for quite a while, covering these risk areas. So you would have been able to use system recommendations to know if they've been applied or not been applied in your systems. And then furthermore, there are kind of some secondary measures that you should take in terms of securing your communications, essentially applying secure network communications, S&C, and that also, in terms of its configuration and parameters, settings for S&C, is something that you can and could have been able to monitor through Solution Manager. So Solution Manager can and does enable you to address issues like 10K blaze. But I think the point that I want to make, and I think Georg will agree, is that it's not just about 10K blaze. It's about other ways in which SAP systems can be attacked and breached and compromised. So it's important to take a broader approach. And when you're using tools like CVA and Solution Manager, you're really ensuring that you're putting in the proper safeguards and mechanisms to secure, firstly, your custom code, because essentially securing a custom code is a customer's responsibility, it's not SAP. SAP is only responsible for securing its code that it delivers to you, and then also for ensuring that you're properly configuring and maintaining and monitoring your systems, and maintaining administrative user privileges, so you're decreasing the likelihood or the susceptibility of your systems to exploits. And then secondly, where there are attempted exploits, you're increasing the probability and your ability to detect them rapidly, and then to respond to them effectively using the tools that are available to you. Okay. And that really concludes the webinar. I'm just going to reach out to my colleague Zara and see if there's any questions that need to be addressed. Zara, are you on the call?
Hi, Aman. Hi, everyone. Yes, there are a couple of questions in the chat that has been answered already by Georg, but we have more questions here. Maybe I can raise two or three questions. One of them is, what are the minimum requirements for security monitoring with Solution Manager?
Okay. Well, the applications that we've just covered, they're automatically enabled once you do the mandatory configuration for Solution Manager. So the mandatory configuration steps have changed slightly between 7.1 and 7.2, but essentially it's your system preparation, your managed system configuration, and etc. So standard steps that you go through whenever you install and set up a new SOLMAN system. You also want to enable application monitoring, which is kind of another area of Solution Manager. And once you enable application monitoring, it then essentially enables those applications within SOLMAN that support system monitoring. So those are the fundamental requirements for using these areas. In terms of the CVA integration, as I said earlier, you don't need to enable CCM. If you are on enterprise support, you can enable it, and then if you're using CVA, you should start to collect data for CVA findings. But if you haven't, then you can work with layer 7 and you can use the connector. In terms of versioning, most of these applications are available in 7.1 and 7.2. Would recommend that you use 7.2. Mainly because 7.1 is out of maintenance, so you really shouldn't be using 7.1 anymore. And besides security, there's other reasons for using 7.2, not 7.1. In terms of SP level, we would recommend that you be on SP7 or higher, only because SAP is withdrawing the connectivity from Solution Manager to the SAP backbone for version 7. I believe it's SP7, no, SP6 or lower. So at SP7, you're fine. Yeah, so you want to be on SP7 or higher. And if you're not on that SP level, you want to get the SP level at some point this year, so that you can maintain that connectivity between SAP and Solution Manager from the end of this year. Any other questions, or?
Yes, I have another one here. How long does a deployment take?
Well, it depends how you're doing it. Like if you're doing this from scratch, or like if you're taking your own Solution Manager and you're building out this monitoring, including all the capabilities that we spoke about. I mean, you got to remember, Layer 7, we've been specializing in this in years. So we've had dedicated teams and of working on this area for years, and it's taken us that long to get to where we are right now. So it would be if you wanted to do it to its fullest capabilities, to the level that we've spoken about here, internally, using your own resources at your own organization, it would be quite an extensive and kind of a long-term type of effort. If, on the other hand, what you did is work with a partner like Layer 7, and you essentially license what is our extension for Solution Manager, and the extension essentially means that you're able to accelerate the adoption of these areas, and because essentially, rather than building everything from scratch, it's applied as an add-on into your Solution Manager. Typically, that doesn't take that long in a kind of a regular size landscape. So you're looking at probably something like 2 to 4 weeks. Providing that the Solman SIS platform itself is ready in terms of all the mandatory configuration being performed. Yeah, so it not that extensive if you're using the Layer 7 extension, but obviously much longer if you're kind of going it on your own.
All right, last one, Amin. There is a question here. It says, can you customize rule sets?
Yes, you can. So the great thing about Solution Manager is that everything is really transparent in Solution Manager. Nothing's really hard-coded. So when we're looking at, for example, monitoring metrics and alerts, those can be adjusted, and you can add custom metrics and alerts. And we've done that in many cases for customers where they have custom monitoring scenarios. At the vulnerability management side, yes, again, the rule sets are transparent, so you can add and remove, you can adjust thresholds and operators for individual checks. Yeah, so the answer is yes. And we have some customers that have their own frameworks. I mean, they've mature organizations that over the years have developed their own internal SAP security framework, and then are looking to build some automated monitoring that automatically checks their configuration against their own standards. And again, they use the same type of approach that we've used here to implement that. But in most cases, what we implement is essentially a kind of a standard, a best practice that we've developed over the years, which customers may tweak, but on the whole, it's kind of majority of whatever we provide. Okay,
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, that's about it. The rest had been answered by George.
Okay, great. Georg, you have any last comments, anything that you want to add?
Not really. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, well, thank you, Gil. Thank you, Zara. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hopefully, it's been informative for you. We will send the deck out to all of the attendees, and if you have any questions, I believe contact information is also going to be on the deck. I do need to apologize because it looks like I used an older version of the deck, which is missing the slide on 10K Blaze, but when you do get the deck, you'll see that it's in there. Any questions, again, feel free to reach out to me, and I appreciate you joining, and have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.